Hi there, this is Jim, the Keys Bartender, coming to you from Key Largo. Let me stop the music here. How are you today? Oh, it's going well here. We have a little off and on rainy day in Key Largo. I hope all's going well with the weather where you are from. We are halfway through the month, almost halfway through the month. 2 more weeks to New Year's Eve to start thinking about what they call New Year's resolutions. Yes. And as a bartender, as whatever occupation that you're choosing, it's probably a good idea to rethink how we do our jobs. I noticed that whenever I'm unhappy with what I'm doing, it generally has to do with something I'm unhappy with in my life, not necessarily with the job I'm doing. And it spills out to those other things we do in life, our relationships, jobs, general satisfaction, way of doing. And I don't know if I don't think it's a bad idea to reevaluate what we're doing and how we're doing things. I know there's always room for improvement for me, but that doesn't mean you have to beat yourself up. A list of things you want to do, like New Year's resolutions, could turn out to be a thing where you're just listing every thing you think is negative about yourself. You know, part of the end of the year maybe just an idea of listing things you're happy with too, and things you'd like to improve. I'm someone like Dr. Phil or a professional psychologist, and I do have views on people like that because there are people all the time that are under care of professionals who don't get better. And it's a very tough job being a social worker, psychologist, counselor, all those things, because they can try to treat the illness, but really what happens for things that the needs people have when they go to psychologists or counselors is something internal. And it changes that need to occur, or things that need to occur internally. The way we think, the way we do things, the way we process information, which is thinking, right? I think since it was last year, I had my operation right towards the end of 2020. So I lumped that right into the process of waiting for the operation took over more than 6-7 months of 2020. But the process of healing took over all of 2021. It wasn't a major operation, but I did have a huge New Year's resolution was taking care of myself better. Thinking about the things I put in my body. How do I take care of my body? How do I think about? I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about how I think about myself and how I think about other people. I was just thinking of the physical, the things I put in, the things I do for my body, the things I don't do for my body. For one thing in particular, my wife said was that it seems like I have maybe some kind of dairy problem. That I did a lot of dairy, a lot of milk, a lot of cheeses, ice cream, and it produced a lot of repercussions for me, inflammation maybe, or something like that. I didn't go to a doctor, but who knows your body better than you? Who knows your body better than you? It's just like when you're exercising. When you're exercising and something hurts, there's good hurt and bad hurt. There's the bad hurt of when you're running and you can feel your knees clicking together, and it's painful. Or there's muscle soreness that occurs from general exercise or focusing on a certain area. So those things you have to really gauge, and you almost have to put into a benefits and deficiencies, or benefits and drawbacks. And I figure that, maybe I needed to cut back. That's a small thing, dairy. Another thing, recently I've been very cantankerous. I have been. I've been very abrasive, very contradictory to people, confrontational for me, which is pretty confrontational. I'm not one to really let things stew anymore. I don't want to be one of those people that just pop. Just pop. I mean, they say a lot of people in the service industry, they just, and I mentioned that too, I think maybe last week or the week before, about matching energy. I don't know if that's necessarily a good deal, but you definitely have to be careful how you swallow things, how you accept things that come towards you. Right? Because someone could say something pretty nasty to you or treat you pretty nasty, and you could start thinking in your head, well, I probably deserve that. And in some cases, maybe. Some cases, maybe not. So you got to be really careful with things like that. Internalizing things that people say or behave or act around you. And you have to be considerate of how you let that go. Let that go. Just release it. Like the other week, I was just incensed at some news I heard. And it wasn't political. It directly affected me in my job, and I took it personally. And I almost went outside of my place of work to just do a primal scream. But I was wondering, I said, boy, I had this hyper-aggression that I wasn't sure where it came from or what was the basis for it. And then I realized, you know it, if you're avid listeners, that I've been taking testosterone supplements. And pretty much I ignored the rule that you should cycle off that every so often, so you can get a baseline of what you're like without it. I do some of the vitamin B shots. I take some other vitamin supplements. I take some neurological clarity ones because I get that middle of the day downslide where I get kind of nappy. I don't mean my hand all stuck together. I mean nappy, getting drowsy. So I have to be considerate of the things that I do put in my body and stuff like that, even though they're supplements and even though they're things to address things that are deficiencies or perceived deficiencies in my body. They could be affecting me too, and I have to be considerate of the things that are going on in my body and that it may affect me adversely. You don't want to hold everything in, right? You don't need to go that postal route. I don't mean you're going to be dropping off messages to people. I'm talking about going postal, and everyone mentions going postal, which is just letting it go and going crazy. I've seen it. I've seen it where someone really, really just, you see the breaking point with some people. and they don't have outlets for it. I have this, the podcast. I have my journal that I use to keep track of the things in my podcast. It really helps me reflect. And if I really needed to, I can go back and say, hey, listen, I don't think I was in a particularly good place at that time. And especially since there's the holiday seasons coming up and we're just still in the middle of the pandemic. And people are frustrated and want to blame people and they want to blame governments. And yes, there is probably someone responsible. But something was going to happen. Those stories have been around for a long time. The reason why their stories have been around because it's a possibility. We have biological labs working on things. There's always something that could get away. Or there's all sorts of things. We're taking resources out of environments that we normally didn't go into before. So we're getting more access to things we've never had access before. Populations are more likely to come in contact with populations they never had before. If you just think of the way the North American continent was when Europeans made their first contact there, that there was a whole bunch of biological ailments that would occur, that it did occur. People got sick because they were coming in contact with things these populations have never had been in contact with before for thousands of years. So in a frustration, humans at least, because of our cognitive capabilities, we got to generate a blame instead of addressing the problem. I think sometimes it does make sense maybe finding the source of problems so we can address them, but at some point we have to address the problem first. When you say, well, it's your fault. The reason why we're just think of that people that go on a trip when you're driving. It's harder to get lost nowadays because of GPS and mapping software and applications. But when you do get lost, if you're in with a couple of people, you're going to blame. You even blame the GPS. I blame my GPS one time. I'm going over to when I was getting looked after for my thing last year. The growth on my neck. I was going to the doctor's and I thought it placed me on one side of a highway of the turnpike in Florida and was actually on the other side. And I was probably just misreading it correctly. Or I may have put it in the wrong way. But we do have a propensity to place the blame on people. It happens every place. Someone wants to know, how could this have happened? How did any of this happen? How come I'm unhappy? How come I'm fat? How come I don't feel so good? How come I'm sick? I got sick. Who did I get it from? Very few people want to look within and just say, hey, listen, it's kind of my fault. And then, do you really want to blame yourself all the time? No. But you should maybe be blaming anyway. What can I do? This happened. What can I do to address it? That's what we eventually do anyway. When you're sick, you go to a doctor, you're going to address it. You go, well, my fucking best friend went and, was at a orgy and he got sick and we were hanging out and I must have got the call from him or her. I don't know why I picked orgy. Because usually at an orgy, you usually pick up an STD. Which you could probably pick up a cold. I wonder what happened to the swinger clubs right now. During COVID. I mean, they could still wear the mask because that'd be kind of like an eyes wide shut thing. They could just make it incorporated into it. I see people all the time now at the gym. Some people wear the, even though it's not required all the time at the gym. There was a young lady there the other day. I'm assuming it was a young lady. She was wearing a baseball cap. She was wearing glasses and a mask. So it was very hard to tell who it was. But, at the end of the year, we can focus on our deficiencies, or we can focus on the successes we had and said, how can I build on those? Right? How can I build on those successes? Or how can I even become better at what I do? And it could have been a bad year. It could have been a bad year. But you don't have to trash the whole year. Those bad things that happen in 2021 could be things that help you in 2022. The lessons learned. Well, let me move on from that. Last night, Monday night, we had a lovely dinner. My co-workers and I, the owners of the restaurant I worked, they had a dinner at another local restaurant, which I think is camaraderie in the business community. When you go and say, hey, listen, we're going to go over here. We're going to have dinner over here. And they did a lovely job. The servers were wonderful. It was the Buzz. And I think the Buzzers, they're mile marker 106.5 Oceanside in Key Largo. And they have a lovely group of employees and the manager, Greg. They did an excellent job. Excellent job. We had a nice dinner. We had appetizers. Some people had drinks. I still don't drink. I'm thankful for that. Anything bad happened the last 2 years for me? One of the things that wasn't bad, I haven't had a drink. And next Monday will be 2 years. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I know I'm just one day away or one moment away from taking a drink. So I got to be ready and wary. Not overly wary. I work in a bar. I accidentally picked up a glass, a couple months ago, and I took a sip, and I tasted the vodka. Instead of swallowing it, I think you would have been proud, I leaned over into one of my bar sinks, and I spit it out, which people were kind of grossed out at that. And they said, what did you drink? And I said, it was vodka by accident. And they said, oh, wow, you're doing all right. And I said, oh. In the end, I wasn't feeling that way. I said, boy, what a stupid thing to do. I could have just I could have done it. I could have done it a little more discreetly. But I think I had about 10 customers watch me spit this stuff into a sink. And then someone pointed out and said, hey, Jim, that was pretty good. That first instinct of yours was to spit it out. And I didn't even think of that. Because the first thing you do when you start congratulating yourself, you start thinking, well, I got a handle on this, and you don't start thinking about it anymore. Which I think where any notification I had, so when you're trying to avoid something, you should wear that kind of as a loose garment. So my sobriety is a loosely hung garment about my body. It's not a straitjacket. I could take it off, but it's not constraining me. So I could take it, but I'm not. And that's the thing. So that's the way I'm approaching that. So we had our lovely Christmas. I had to leave it early because the wife wasn't feeling so hot, and I just didn't feel right staying. What did I do? I took my daughter instead, and we had a lovely meal. I loaded up on it. I had so much appetizers and stuff like that. I really couldn't eat my meal. So I took something I rarely ever do. I took my food home. I did a to-go container. But I'm gonna eat it. I ate half of it. I'm gonna eat the other half. I'm proud of myself. I'm doing things that I normally don't do, and one of them is taking home to-go container. I know it's kind of emasculating, but I'm 58 years old. I don't think there's any dangers that I'm worrying about looking bad among someone. And think about that. we'll do a little transition for that, but the Christmas party season is here. And the office Christmas party. And it's full of stereotypical behaviors. And it's fueled by alcohol. Could be a little pot. Could be other substances. It could be pent-up frustrations. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be doing the Christmas parties anymore. I think the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, is in a load of hot water for having some kind of Christmas party, some party last year in the middle of the shutdown in Britain, about a month before the vaccines were issued. So there's a whole new take to the Christmas party. I mean, there's people that are doing, how can you have a Zoom Christmas party? There's people that do have cocktail parties where they're hanging around, drinking, talking to each other online. And people say, well, there's really no substitute for being in person. Well, sometimes that's the only recourse if you're going to have a party with someone, that you're going to look at them through that. And if you're not touching them, what does it really matter? How close are you going to be with that person? You're missing maybe some of the body language. But it's really not the same. It's really no different or not the same. Depends. Be a little less dancing. A little less bad behavior if you talk about physical actions. Like the hidden tryst at the Christmas party where people end up getting together. When I was in college, there was a Christmas party it was after a Christmas party, after we had dinner at an Italian restaurant. I worked in a nightclub downtown. It was 1986, if I remember correctly. My last year of college. My last year of my undergraduate year. So we had a lovely dinner in South Philadelphia, in the Italian neighborhood of South Philly. This particular South Philly. It was a lovely meal. I love Italian food. And then we went back to the nightclub that we worked in. I think it was on a Monday night, because we're not normally open on a Monday night. And I had invited a woman I knew and my brother. I think I invited my brother. You were allowed to invite 2 people or 3. I invited my brother, my younger brother, and a female bartender I met someplace else. And I think she came from her job. And I ended up, it was a horrible experience for one reason. One of my co-workers, and we had some lovely girls working there, some cocktail waitresses, and they used to wear full body kind of, I don't even know what you call it, leotards, full body leotards. That was it. Leaving little to the imagination, covering up all the skin, but skin tight all around. And they were beautiful girls. And a couple of them, or 2 of them, let it be known that they were interested. And I had this woman I invited, but we had never gone out before. I just invited her to invite her. And that was awkward. That was probably one of the Christmas parties I regret the most. And there was others at the catering hall in Rosewood. Any of you people from the Rosewood, if you remember that, there were Christmas parties that would start, if I remember correctly, they would start around 7:30, and we'd eat around 10, and the bar's open the whole time. And the party really started kicking on. I mean, we do a little Pollyanna. We had about 100 people there, so we did all the Pollyanna the gift exchange, and then we were drinking the whole time. So I think it all started really kicking into high gear 11 o'clock. And a couple times later years, it would go till sunrise. Yep, it was a hardcore crew, I'm telling you. And they weren't all young. You started in their 20s and made it all the way up into their 60s. And the older people would start leaving maybe around 11:30. But everyone else just kicking and whew. And I guess we didn't get, it depends on what you consider embarrassing behavior. If everyone's behaving in a similar fashion, then it's really hard to point out anybody in particular unless they behave in an outlier fashion. I don't think the lampshade on the head would really qualify as bad behavior. I think walking around without your pants on, that would qualify as that maybe. That's a good one. Getting stuck in the bathroom with someone, going into the bathroom with someone to wait. Getting caught. Getting caught actually was the one. But, the Christmas party thing, I mean, work is, for some people, when it's their livelihood, the Christmas party is a minefield. It's a minefield. You just think about it. You got people at the end of the year, you're really not at work. Some people may behave like they're at work, but I think when the people at Christmas parties, you have the chain of command is turned on its side sometimes. And the most popular people in the place of work seem to take a higher position. And they may forget themselves. Forget themselves, it sounds a little like they may fuck themselves. They do fuck themselves. They say things that they don't mean, or say things, if people believe that alcohol is a truth serum, that they're saying things they mean, they do, but they don't say. And it's right before the New Year's. And it's funny, the things that happen during Christmas parties are the things that might lead to people adding certain behaviors to their New Year's resolution a couple weeks later. And we'll be seeing that a whole time. People say, hey, talking about how they should make a resolution and stuff. Every day we should pretty much make a resolution. If there's something we know that we shouldn't be doing, that we should be doing, that's we, not someone else telling us. Because obviously in a relationship and your behavior affects the relationship, then that person should be telling you you should be. But if you need to make a resolution and you know what it is, just imagine. Sometimes it could be fictional, meaning I should be more forthcoming, more adventurous. And people around you may think, wow, they already seem very adventurous. What are you going to do? Light your balls on fire? That's pretty adventurous. Sounds very dangerous. Well, I'm looking forward. We're having some parties and stuff like that for work. I'm not in any particular... I don't know if it's from the bartending job or what, but I don't feel the need to go to a lot of different Christmas parties. Because where I work, I think it's kind of like a party on every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. At least I should. We're the kind of place it's at. I mean, it's funny when you get the finer dining areas are less fun. You could get a lot of enjoyment out of it, but less fun. It's a conundrum. So the place I work at, it's about having a good time. It's not very refined. And refinement could be a restriction on people cutting loose. So there are all sorts of things. So I wouldn't make my resolutions too early. But then again, I wouldn't really lean into those resolutions, into those problems, say, well, listen, I'm making a resolution not to drink in the New Year's. So I'm going to double up in that last week. That is not necessarily a good idea. You're on the road for, a DUI or a battery charge, a horrible hangover, horrible incident. So the best Christmas present and New Year's present you give to yourself is take a little moderation with all things in the New Year's. Another thing, don't stress. We're leading up to it. The supply chain is weak right now. It's slow. Santa's not going to be bringing everything this year. You may not get the car, the cell phone, your specialty dildo, your cheese, your charcuterie box. It may not get here in time. So we may help to be a little more creative. I noticed a lot of offerings on television this year seem to be services. So like eye massage or whatever, stuff like that, when some people have another online application. I'm surprised that Airbnb is an offering is saying, listen, why don't you send a gift certificate for Airbnb or Uber or something like that? First thing. They do have it for those meals. They say, you know what's a great one they send? Send these meals. HelloFresh and places like that. There's that story about what the best gift would be. And if someone really cares about you, and hopefully you're giving gifts to people that care about you. I mean, sometimes gifts are just there to show your gratitude and say, listen, I appreciate you. I don't really care if you care. But this is an expression of my appreciation. That's nice. But another thing is an expression of feeling someone and saying, listen, I want to get you a gift. I want to get something that knows that I was thinking of you. So I know it's important, but sometimes it's not going to be under the... And from one of these sermons, it was on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, was the greatest gift you could ever give someone on Christmas is the gift of yourself, or the best part of yourself. That is the best part for that person. So if it's a spouse, fidelity, care, understanding. For children, it could be understanding, time. Time's good to spend with anybody. There's just so many things that are important to people other than objects. And we get all stressed out over it. And I know about stress because I eat stress. I swallow stress, and I express it. I'm not one of those. I've never been one of those guys. We do not express dissatisfaction. I express glee. I express dissatisfaction. I express anger very easily. It shows in my eyes. It shows in my face. It shows in my mouth. But today I started cycling off that testosterone. I feel a little less driven by my baser feelings. That could be a reverse placebo effect. Meaning, oh, I'm not taking this, so I shouldn't feel this way anymore. When I went to the gym today, I take that supplement in order to enhance my workout. And I didn't row as long as I wanted to, but I ran a little longer and I did more sit-ups than I normally do. So all in all, I think it was all a wash, pretty good stuff. And hopefully I'll be able to do that tomorrow and see and I'll keep you posted on it. I don't know if you really care about that. Maybe you do, but I appreciate ways you do care or don't care, but I will try not to spend too much time on that. And don't fret over what you can give someone or what you're going to get from somebody. If you can focus on trying to be your best self, you might end up in a lot better place in the end. It doesn't give you a license to be stingy. If you have the ability, make sure you take care of the people that you can around you and alleviate their needs. Right? If your kids needs clothes, you're going to have to get your kids clothes. Your pet needs a bone, get him a bone. Right? Need a bone. Well, I'm going to wrap this up today. I'd like to thank all you guys out there for downloading. We've been having a great couple weeks. Some ups and downs, but generally our listenership and downloading is huge. I appreciate it. And it's growing. I ran into, at the Christmas party I went to last night, I ran into some friends who, one of the women said to me, listen, I'm still listening to your show. And I said, oh, thank you. I better say something nice to them. But they're a lovely couple, and they've always been supportive of me. And they come in, and they want to have a good time, and they come to see me. And sometimes I've been exactly the person I wanted to be. No, I can admit that. I haven't been the person I wanted to be. I want to be receptive. I want to be happy. And I will endeavor. That'll be a gift to myself. Because I always feel better when I do that. I need to be a little more facile, like I used to be when I was younger. Easygoing. A good-natured if you'd call it. Well, thank you for listening. Keep up the downloads, and I will be back to you. When am I going to be back? Maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday. But thank you for listening. Take care.